The photograph landed on my kitchen table at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and everything I thought I knew about my life shattered into a million pieces. I remember the exact time because I had just glanced at the clock, calculating how long I had before my shift at the hospital started. 22 years as a nurse had taught me that timing was everything, in medicine, in emergencies, and apparently in discovering that your entire marriage was a lie. My neighbor, Patricia, stood in my doorway with tears streaming down her face, her hand trembling as she slid the photo across my granite countertop. She couldn't even look me in the eye. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. I didn't know if I should show you, but you deserve to know. You've always been so good to everyone. You don't deserve this." I picked up the photograph with steady hands, the same hands that had held dying patients, that had comforted grieving families, that had raised 2 children largely on my own, while my husband built his career. The image showed my husband, Richard, walking into the Grandview Hotel downtown, his arm wrapped possessively around the waist of a woman who couldn't have been older than 25. She had long blonde hair, legs that went on forever, and she was looking up at him like he'd hung the moon. But that wasn't the part that made my blood run cold. Standing at the reception desk, handling the check-in, was my son. My 24-year-old son, Daniel, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, the child I had worked double shifts to put through college. He was smiling at his father, handing over a room key like this was the most natural thing in the world. "Patricia," I said, my voice eerily calm, "where did you get this photograph?" She explained, "My daughter works at the hotel. She recognized Richard and Daniel. She said Richard used your name to book the room, Mr. and Mrs. Richard and Margaret Collins. She thought it was strange because the woman with him clearly wasn't you. She's been seeing them there every Thursday for the past 3 months." 3 months. Every Thursday. For 3 months, my husband had been taking his mistress to a hotel room booked under my name, and my own son had been facilitating it. Every Thursday, I worked the night shift. Every Thursday, I came home exhausted at 7 a.m. to an empty house, believing Richard was already at work and Daniel was at his apartment across town. I thought about all the Thursdays. The texts Richard sent me, "Hope your shift goes well, honey. Love you." The calls from Daniel, "Hey, Mom, just checking in. Dad said you're working late again. Take care of yourself." They had created an entire system, a choreographed betrayal. "Thank you, Patricia," I said, carefully placing the photograph face down on the table. She looked at me with something like awe. "You're so calm. How are you so calm?" I smiled, and even I knew it didn't reach my eyes. Because I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to scream, I'm going to think, and then I'm going to act. The first thing I did after Patricia left was call in sick to work. In 22 years, I had never once called in sick. My supervisor, Nancy, was so shocked she asked me 3 times if I was okay. "I'm fine," I assured her. "Just need a personal day." Then I sat down at my computer and began to dig. Richard and I had been married for 26 years. We'd met when I was 22 and he was 25, both of us young and full of dreams. He was going to be a big-shot lawyer, and I was going to be a nurse. We'd build a beautiful life together. And for a while, we did. We had Daniel when I was 24, and our daughter Emma when I was 28. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Richard's career took off while mine plateaued. He started working late, traveling for conferences, becoming distant. I told myself it was normal. I told myself all marriages went through rough patches. I told myself as long as we stayed together, everything would be fine. What a fool I had been. I started with our bank accounts. Richard had always handled the finances. He was the lawyer, after all, the one who understood money and investments. I had trusted him completely. Now, as I logged into our joint account for the first time in years, I felt that trust crumbling like ash. There were transfers, thousands of dollars moved systematically to an account I didn't recognize. Restaurant charges at places I'd never been, jewelry purchases I'd never received, hotel bookings, not just the Grandview, but others, the Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons, a beach resort in Miami that I had never heard of. My hands started shaking then, but I forced myself to keep digging. I found credit card statements hidden in Richard's home office, tucked inside a folder labeled Tax Documents 2019. The charges painted a picture of a life I didn't recognize. Lingerie from high-end boutiques, spa treatments, first-class flights to destinations Richard had told me were boring trips that I wouldn't enjoy. He'd been living a double life, and he'd been funding it with our money that I had helped earn, money that was supposed to be for our retirement, for our future. But the worst discovery came when I found the emails. Richard had a second email account. I only discovered it because he'd been careless. He'd left himself logged in on the family computer, probably assuming I'd never check. The inbox was full of messages to someone named Brittany. Can't wait to see you Thursday, baby. Margaret's working the night shift again. Danny's going to handle everything at the hotel. We'll have all night. I know you want me to leave her, and I will. I just need more time. The divorce has to be handled carefully. I can't let her take half of everything I've built. You're the love of my life, Brittany. Margaret was always just a placeholder, a way to have kids and look respectable. But you're the real thing. A placeholder. 26 years, 2 children, countless sacrifices, missed opportunities, dreams deferred, and I was a placeholder?
I read email after email, each one more devastating than the last. Richard talked about me like I was furniture, useful but ultimately replaceable. He mocked my appearance, my job, my boring personality. He told Brittany that I had let myself go and that he was embarrassed to be seen with me. And Daniel, my sweet Daniel, who I had raised and loved and sacrificed for, was mentioned repeatedly. Danny's been a huge help. He thinks Margaret is too controlling and that I deserve to be happy. He's going to testify on my behalf when the divorce happens. He's agreed to tell the court that his mother was emotionally distant and that the marriage breakdown was her fault. My son, my own son, was plotting against me. I closed the laptop and sat in silence for a long time. The house felt different now. Every corner held a memory that had been poisoned. The couch where Richard and I had watched movies, the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals, the bedroom where I had slept beside him for over 2 decades, never knowing that his heart belonged to someone else. I thought about crying. I thought about screaming. I thought about driving to the hotel and confronting them all in a spectacular scene that would make headlines. But I'm not that kind of woman. I'm the kind of woman who survives, who plans, who waits, and who strikes when the moment is right. The next few weeks were the most difficult of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal. I had to smile at Richard across the breakfast table, kiss him goodbye when he left for work, listen to his lies with a pleasant expression on my face. I had to take phone calls from Daniel, hearing him ask about my health, my work, my life, knowing that he was betraying me with every word. But beneath the surface, I was working. The first thing I did was consult a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but the best divorce attorney in the state. Her name was Victoria Sterling, and she had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless. When I walked into her office and laid out my evidence, she actually smiled. "Mrs. Collins," she said, leaning back in her leather chair, "I'm going to enjoy this case." Victoria explained my options. In our state, adultery could significantly impact divorce proceedings, especially when it came to asset division. But more importantly, Richard had been hiding money. He had been transferring funds to secret accounts, underreporting his income, and generally engaging in the kind of financial fraud that judges took very seriously. Your husband is a lawyer. He should have known better. But arrogance makes people sloppy, and sloppy people lose. We developed a strategy. I would continue to gather evidence while Victoria prepared the legal groundwork. When we were ready, we would strike fast and hard, giving Richard no time to hide assets or prepare a defense. But I wasn't just focused on the legal battle. I was also focused on something much more personal: rebuilding myself. For 26 years, I had put everyone else first: Richard's career, the children's needs, the household. My own dreams and desires had been pushed aside, deemed less important than keeping the family running smoothly. No more. I started small. I joined a gym, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I updated my wardrobe, replacing the frumpy clothes I'd worn for years with pieces that made me feel confident and alive. I got a new haircut, started wearing makeup again, began to see myself as someone worth investing in. The transformation wasn't just physical. I also started to reconnect with parts of myself I'd lost. I read books again, not just medical journals, but novels and poetry and philosophy. I took walks in the park. I had coffee with friends I had neglected. I remembered what it felt like to be a person, not just a wife and mother. And I watched. I documented. I prepared. Every Thursday, I pretended to go to work for the night shift. Instead, I parked outside the Grandview Hotel and photographed Richard and Brittany arriving together. I noted Daniel's car in the parking lot. I recorded conversations when Richard called to check in and express his concern for my long hours. I hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Brittany. What I learned made me laugh out loud. Brittany Summers, 24 years old, a marketing consultant who, according to the PI, had never actually held a steady job. Her previous boyfriend had been a 60-year-old executive who had divorced his wife for her and then been discarded when his money ran out. Before that, she'd been linked to a married politician whose career had ended in scandal. Brittany wasn't in love with Richard. She was in love with what Richard could provide: money, status, a comfortable life. And she was very, very good at her game. But not as good as me. 2 months into my investigation, my daughter, Emma, came home for a visit. Emma was 22, a graduate student at a university 3 hours away. Unlike Daniel, she had always been perceptive, always been close to me. We talked on the phone twice a week, and she often expressed concern about how hard I worked and how little I seemed to do for myself. "Mom, you look different. Good different. Really good." "I've been making some changes," I said, hugging her tight. Over dinner that night, Richard was working late, of course. Emma studied me with those sharp eyes of hers. "Mom, is everything okay? And don't lie to me." I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, intelligent daughter, and made a decision. I had been carrying this burden alone for months. I needed someone in my corner, someone I could trust completely. I told her everything. Emma listened in silence as I laid out the evidence, the photographs, the emails, the secret accounts, and most painfully, Daniel's involvement. When I finished, she was pale but composed. "I always knew Dad was selfish, but Daniel? I can't believe Daniel would do this to you." I couldn't either, but the evidence is clear. Emma reached across the table and took my hand. "What can I do to help?" "For now, nothing. I need you to act normal. Don't let your father or brother know that anything is wrong. Can you do that?" "I can do anything for you, Mom."
Over the next few days, Emma became my confidant and ally. She helped me organize evidence, provided emotional support when I needed it, and even contributed her own observations. "Daniel's always been Dad's favorite," she said one night. "He's always sided with him, even when Dad was clearly wrong. Remember when Dad forgot your anniversary and blamed you for not reminding him? Daniel agreed with him, said you should have been more understanding of Dad's stress." I remembered. A lot of things I had chosen to overlook. "I think Daniel sees himself in Dad," Emma continued. "They're both ambitious. They both think the rules don't apply to them, and they both underestimate you." She was right. They had always underestimated me.
The quiet nurse who worked long hours and never complained. The devoted wife who looked the other way. The selfless mother who sacrificed everything. They had no idea who they were dealing with. 3 months into my preparation, I made a discovery that turned everything upside down. I had been going through old photographs, looking for anything that might be useful in the divorce proceedings, when I found a box I didn't recognize. It was hidden in the back of Richard's closet, behind his golf clubs and winter coats. Inside were letters. Dozens of letters spanning years. And they weren't from Brittany. They were from other women. The earliest was dated 15 years ago. 15 years. Daniel had been 9. Emma had been 5. I had been working myself to the bone to support our family while Richard built his career. There had been someone named Sandra in 2009, a Jennifer in 2012, a Michelle in 2015. Each affair had apparently lasted a few months before ending. Each woman had written love letters that Richard had kept like trophies. And then I found something else. A birth certificate. A birth certificate for a child named Thomas Richards, born in 2016, mother Michelle Hartwell, father Richard Collins. I had a stepson I didn't know about. Richard had fathered a child with another woman while we were married, and he had hidden it from me for 8 years. The birth certificate was accompanied by legal documents, support payments, custody arrangements, all carefully hidden from our family finances through a secondary company Richard had created. He had been paying for this child's care, providing for another family, all while telling me that money was tight and we couldn't afford the vacation I wanted or the home repairs I needed. I sat on the closet floor for a long time, those documents in my hands, and I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about an affair. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about a man who had systematically lied to me for our entire marriage, who had created entire shadow lives while I worked and sacrificed and loved him, who had fathered children with other women and kept them secret while I raised his children alone. I had been angry before. Now I was something else entirely. I was resolved. I called Victoria Sterling the next morning and told her about the discovery. "This changes everything," she said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. Hidden assets are one thing. A hidden child is another entirely. The court will not look kindly on this level of deception. What about the child, Thomas? He's innocent in all of this. You're right. And you're a better person than I am for thinking of that. We'll make sure any settlement accounts for his needs without penalizing him for his father's actions. That was important to me. I was angry at Richard, not at an 8-year-old boy who had never asked to be born into this mess. Thomas was as much a victim as I was, maybe more, because he would grow up knowing that his father had kept him a secret, had been ashamed of his existence. But my compassion for Thomas didn't extend to his father, or to Daniel, who I was becoming more certain had known everything. The confrontation with Daniel happened by accident, 2 weeks before I was planning to file for divorce. He came over on a Wednesday, unusual since he typically only visited on weekends. Richard was at work, or with Brittany more likely, and I was home preparing documents for Victoria. Daniel walked in without knocking. He still had a key, and found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, legal documents, financial records, photographs. His face went white. "Mom, what is this?" I looked at my son, my firstborn, the child I loved unconditionally for 24 years, and felt a sadness so profound it almost overwhelmed the anger.
I think you know what this is, Daniel. He didn't deny it. He didn't try to explain or apologize. Instead, his faith hardened. Dad said you'd find out eventually. He said you were too smart not to. And yet you helped him anyway. You don't understand, Daniel said, his voice rising. Dad's been miserable for years. You're never around. You're always working or tired or distracted. He deserves to be happy. I was never around because I was working to pay for your college. I was tired because I was carrying this entire family on my back. I was distracted because your father refused to participate in raising you. That's not true. It is true, and you know it. I stood up facing him directly. I was at every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every baseball game and science fair and award ceremony. Where was your father, Daniel? How often was he actually present? Daniel's jaw clenched. He had to work. He had to cheat. There's a difference. Brittany makes him happy. She makes him feel young again. Brittany is using him for his money, and when it runs out, she'll move on to someone else. I've done my research. She's done this before. I paused. But that's not really what we're talking about, is it? We're talking about you, my son. The child I raised and loved and sacrificed for. Helping your father betray me? I was helping him be happy. I was helping him humiliate me. I was helping him use my name to book hotel rooms for his affair. I was planning to testify against me in court, to tell lies about me being emotionally distant, to help him take everything from me. My voice was steady, but my heart was breaking. How could you, Daniel? What did I ever do to deserve this from you?
For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or shame. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by defensive anger. You always favored Emma. You never understood me. I loved you both equally, but Emma never plotted against me. I'm not plotting against you. I'm supporting my father. At my expense. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. I want you to leave, Daniel, and I want your key back. What? I'm changing the locks anyway, but I want you to give me the key you used to walk in here uninvited, and then I want you to leave. You can't do this. I'm your son. Yes, you are. And that makes this hurt more than you can possibly imagine. I held out my hand. The key, Daniel. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, with a sneer that looked exactly like his father's, he dropped the key on the cable. You're going to regret this. When the divorce happens, when Dad gets everything, you're gonna wish you'd been nicer to us. Maybe, or maybe you're going to regret throwing away your mother for a father who will never prioritize you over himself. I guess we'll see. He stormed out without another word. I sat at the kitchen table, listening to his car screech out of the driveway, and finally allowed myself to cry. Victoria called me 2 days later with news. We're ready, she said. Everything is in place. I've coordinated with the forensic accountant, the private investigator, and the court. We're going to file simultaneously with a motion to freeze assets. Richard won't have time to hide anything. When? Friday, 3 days from now. 3 days. After months of preparation, it was finally happening. There's something else, Victoria continued. I've been in touch with a journalist friend of mine, Amanda Rodriguez from the Chronicle. She's very interested in this story. A prominent attorney hiding assets, fathering secret children, using his wife's name for affairs. It's the kind of scandal that sells papers. I don't want to destroy him publicly, I said, surprising myself. I just want what's fair. I understand, but the threat of publicity might encourage Richard to settle quickly and fairly. A man in his position, partner at a major firm, pillar of the community, can't afford a scandal. She was right. Richard's reputation was everything to him. He had built his entire identity around being respected and admired.
Use it as leverage, I agreed, but only if necessary. Understood. Victoria paused. Margaret, I have to say, you've handled this better than almost any client I've ever had. Most people in your position would have confronted their husband months ago. The restraint you've shown is impressive. It wasn't restraint, it was strategy. Richard underestimated me because I'm quiet, because I don't make scenes, because I've always been the responsible one, the one who holds everything together. He thought that meant I was weak. He was wrong. Well, on Friday, he's going to find out just how wrong he was. The days leading up to Friday felt surreal. I went about my routine, work, home, meals with Richard, where I smiled and nodded and pretended nothing was wrong. He had no idea what was coming. On Thursday night, he told me he was going to a networking event and wouldn't be home until late. I knew he was really going to the Grandview Hotel with Brittany. I almost laughed at the irony. He was spending his last night as a married man in the arms of his mistress, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. "Have a good time," I said, kissing his cheek. "You're the best, Margaret. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You're about to find out," I murmured after he left. Friday morning arrived. I dressed carefully, professional but powerful. Victoria had told me that appearances mattered in court, and I wanted to project strength and competence. At 9 a.m., Richard was served with divorce papers at his office. Simultaneously, a court order froze all his accounts, personal, business, and the hidden ones we had discovered. He couldn't access a single dollar without court approval. At 9:30 a.m., I received a phone call from a blocked number. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched as my phone buzzed with text after text, voicemail after voicemail. "Margaret, what the hell is this? We need to talk. This is a mistake. Call me back now. I can explain everything." At 10 a.m., Victoria called to tell me that Richard had already contacted 5 different lawyers, all of whom had turned him down due to conflicts of interest. She had anticipated this and reached out to every top divorce attorney in the city weeks ago for consultations, which prevented them from representing Richard. "He's going to have to hire someone from out of town," Victoria said with satisfaction, "which means delays, which means the asset free stays in place longer, which means more leverage for us." At noon, Daniel called. I didn't answer. At 2 p.m., Richard showed up at the house. I was ready for him. He burst through the door like a man possessed, his face red with rage. I was sitting calmly in the living room, waiting. "What have you done? Do you have any idea what you have done?" "I've filed for divorce, and I've made sure you can't hide the money you've been stealing from me." "Stealing? It's my money." "It's our money. Earned jointly during our marriage, half of it is mine by law. Although, given your adultery, hidden assets, and secret child, I expect I'll be entitled to significantly more than half." The color drained from his face. "You know about Thomas." "I know about everything, Richard. Sandra, Jennifer, Michelle, Brittany, the secret accounts, the shell company, all of it." He staggered like I'd punched him. "How?" "You were careless. You left your email open. You kept love letters from your affairs like trophies. You created a paper trail a child could follow." I stood up, facing him directly. "You thought I was too stupid to notice, too busy, too trusting. You were wrong." "Margaret, listen to me." His voice changed, becoming soft and pleading. "I made mistakes, I know that. But we can work through this. 26 years, we can't throw that away." "You threw it away 15 years ago when you had your first affair. You threw it away every time you lied to me, every time you spent our money on your mistresses, every time you looked me in the eye and told me you loved me while planning to leave me with nothing." "I never planned to leave you with nothing." "The emails say otherwise." "I can't let her take half of everything I've built. That's what you wrote to Brittany. You were already planning to divorce me. You just wanted to do it on your terms after you'd hidden enough money to leave me destitute."
Richard's mask slipped completely then. The charming, successful lawyer vanished, replaced by something ugly and desperate. You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am? I will destroy you in court. I will make sure you get nothing. You're welcome to try, but I have documentation of every affair, every hidden account, every lie. I have testimony from hotel staff, financial records from your cell company, and a birth certificate for a child you've been hiding for 8 years. I smiled. I also have a journalist friend who's very interested in running a story about a prominent attorney's secret life. Want me to give her your number? For the first time since I'd known him, Richard looked afraid. What do you want? He asked finally. I want what's fair. 50% of all marital assets, including the ones you've hidden. Spousal support commensurate with my contributions to your career and this family. And I want it to be over quickly and quietly. And if I don't agree, then we go to trial. Your affairs become public record. Your colleagues find out. Your clients find out. Your partners find out. Your reputation, the thing you care about most in this world, is destroyed. He was silent for a long moment. Then, very quietly, he said, I underestimated you. Yes, you did. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Richard, faced with the choice between a fair settlement and public humiliation, chose the settlement. I received 55% of our total assets, including the ones he'd hidden, plus spousal support for 10 years. The house was sold. I didn't want to live in a place with so many tainted memories. I bought a smaller place, a cozy cottage near the beach that I'd always dreamed about, but never thought I'd have. Victoria was worth every penny of her fees. She fought for me like I was her own sister, and she made sure Richard couldn't wriggle out of a single obligation. As for the people in my life, things settled into new patterns. Emma moved back to the area after finishing her graduate degree. We're closer than ever. She helped me decorate my new home, and we have dinner together twice a week. She's my rock, my ally, my best friend. Daniel hasn't spoken to me since the divorce. I've heard through the grapevine that he's still close to his father, still working at Richard's firm, still defending the man who betrayed me. It hurts, but I've accepted it. Some wounds don't heal. Some relationships can't be salvaged. I've made peace with the fact that I may never have a relationship with my son again, and while it breaks my heart, I refuse to let it break my spirit. Richard and Brittany broke up 6 months after the divorce. Turns out she wasn't interested in a man who'd lost half his assets and his professional reputation. She's already moved on to someone else, another wealthy married man who thinks she really loves him. Some people never learn. Thomas, the son Richard hid from me for 8 years, is doing well. I reached out to his mother, Michelle, after the divorce. We met for coffee, 2 women who had both been deceived by the same man. She was surprised by my kindness. She expected me to hate her, but how could I hate someone who was also a victim? I've started sending Thomas birthday and Christmas gifts. Nothing extravagant, just small things that let him know someone cares. Michelle sends me pictures sometimes. He's a sweet kid with his father's eyes, but hopefully a better heart. As for me, I'm thriving. I left the hospital and went back to school. At 48, I'm studying to become a nurse practitioner. My professors say I'm one of the best students they've ever had. Apparently, all those years of experience count for something. I travel now. Last month, I went to Italy, something I'd always dreamed about but never done because Richard didn't see the point. I ate pasta in Rome, drank wine in Tuscany, and cried happy tears in front of the David in Florence. I date occasionally. Nothing serious, just coffee or dinner with interesting people who treat me with respect. I learned to recognize my own worth, to accept that I deserve to be loved properly. And every morning, I wake up in my little beach cottage, watch the sunrise over the ocean, and feel grateful for my life. Not grateful for the pain that I could have done without, but grateful for the strength I discovered, the resilience, the courage to face betrayal and not be destroyed by it. 1 year after the divorce, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Daniel. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away, but I need to say some things even if you never respond. I was wrong. I was so wrong about everything. Dad told me you were controlling and cold and that you drove him to other women.
I believed him because it was easier than believing that he was the bad guy. I idolized him my whole life. I wanted to be him. I couldn't accept that he was capable of such cruelty. But then I saw how he treated Brittany after the divorce. When she left him, he called her every name in the book. He blamed her for everything, just like he blamed you. And I realized he does this with everyone. He takes and takes and takes, and then when people stop giving, he discards them and makes it their fault. I've been in therapy for the past 6 months. It's hard. I'm having to confront a lot of things I don't want to face. But I'm trying. I'm trying to become a better person than I was. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I see now. I see what he did to you. I see what I did to you. And I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I hope you're happy. I hope you found peace. I hope you're living the life you deserve. Your son, if you'll still have me. Daniel. I read the letter 3 times. Then I sat on my porch, watching the waves crash against the shore, and thought about what to do.
My first instinct was to ignore it. Daniel had hurt me deeply, had chosen his father over me, had been willing to lie in court to destroy me. He didn't deserve my forgiveness. But here's what I've learned in the past year. Holding on to anger only poisons the person who carries it. I wasn't going to reconcile with Daniel overnight. Trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. But I could open a door, a small one, a crack of light in the darkness. I wrote back, Daniel, I received your letter. I'm glad you're in therapy. I hope you'll continue to do the work. I'm not ready to see you yet. The wound is still too fresh. But I'm not ready to close the door forever either. When you're ready, truly ready, to have an honest conversation about what happened and why, reach out to me. We'll take it from there. I do love you. I never stopped. But love without trust is just pain waiting to happen. And you'll need to earn my trust back. Take care of yourself. Mom. I mailed the letter and felt something release in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but hope, the possibility of healing. 2 years after the divorce, I graduated with my nurse practitioner degree. Emma sat in the front row, cheering louder than anyone else. Patricia, my neighbor who had first shown me that photograph, was there too. So were friends I had reconnected with, colleagues who had supported me, and new friends I had made along the way. Richard wasn't there, of course. I hadn't seen him since the final court hearing. I heard he left the firm, moved to another state, started over somewhere new. I wished him well in an abstract sort of way, not for his sake, but for mine. Bitterness was a weight I no longer wished to carry. Daniel sent flowers to the graduation. Roses, my favorite. The card said simply, "Proud of you." I smiled when I saw them. We had started talking again, slowly, carefully, with many difficult conversations in between. He had changed. I could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice. He had grown up, taken responsibility, started to understand the magnitude of what he had done. He wasn't the same person who had handed his father hotel keys to facilitate his affairs. Whether we would ever have a normal relationship again, I didn't know, but we were trying, and that was more than I had expected. At the graduation reception, surrounded by people who loved and supported me, I raised a glass of champagne and made a toast. To new beginnings, and to never underestimating quiet women. Everyone laughed and drank. Emma hugged me tight. Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. And I thought about everything that had led me here. The betrayal, the pain, the discovery, the strategy, the fight. I had been a placeholder in my husband's life, a footnote in his story of ambition and selfishness. But now,
Now I was the main character in my own story, and it was just getting started. The beach cottage is full of light in the morning. I wake up early now, not for work, although I still love my job, but because I don't want to miss the sunrise. There's something magical about watching the sky turn from gray to pink to gold, the ocean reflecting colors I couldn't have imagined in my old life. I've been with James for almost a year. We met at a continuing education seminar. He's a physician, widowed, with grown children of his own. Our relationship is nothing like my marriage to Richard. There's honesty, respect, partnership. We share expenses equally, make decisions together, and treat each other with kindness. Sometimes he asks about my past, about Richard and the divorce. I tell him what he needs to know, but I don't dwell. The past is a place I visit occasionally. It's not where I live. Thomas, my former husband's hidden son, is 10 now. He knows about me. Michelle told him a while back, and he had questions. We've met a few times, and while I'll never be his mother, I'm something to him. An aunt, maybe. A friend. Someone who chose to care when she didn't have to. Richard remarried last year. I heard about it through the grapevine. His new wife is 20 years younger than him, ambitious and sharp-eyed. I give it 5 years, maximum. But that's not my problem anymore. Looking back at everything that happened, I sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if Patricia had never shown me that photograph. Would I have continued living in ignorance? Would Richard have eventually left me anyway, discarding me like he discarded all the others? Would I have spent my remaining years as a placeholder, never knowing what I was capable of? I'll never know. And honestly, I'm grateful I don't have to find out. What I do know is this: I survived. I didn't just survive, I thrived. I took the worst thing that ever happened to me and used it as fuel for transformation. I became stronger, more confident, more myself than I had ever been before. The woman who sat at that kitchen table, staring at a photograph of her husband's betrayal, feels like a stranger now. She was broken. I am whole. My husband checked into a hotel with a young woman using my name, and my son helped him. They thought they were getting away with it. They thought I would never find out, and if I did, I would crumble. But I didn't. I rose. And that, in the end, is the only revenge that matters.